They laughed when my name was called. Not strangers. My own family. And when I looked into the crowd, I realized this wasn't an accident. It was planned. I used to believe family embarrassment was something you survived quietly, a few awkward jokes, a little teasing, then life moved on. I was wrong. Because on the most important day of my life, the day I thought would finally earn me respect, my family turned my success into a public joke. It was my graduation ceremony. Years of late nights, borrowed books, skipped meals, all leading to this one moment. I sat in the hall wearing a borrowed gown, my hands shaking, my heart louder than the applause around me. My parents sat in the second row. My older brother was beside them. They looked relaxed. Almost amused. That should have warned me. When the announcer called my name, I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my chest felt light, like maybe, just maybe, today would change how they saw me. That's when the laughter started. At first, I thought it came from the back rows. Then I heard my brother's voice, loud, clear, unmistakable. Careful. Don't trip again like you always do. The people around him laughed. Not cruelly. Casually. As if it were normal. I froze. I felt hundreds of eyes on me, not proud, not impressed, entertained. I looked at my parents. My mother covered her smile with her hand. My father shook his head, still grinning, like this was some harmless family humor. But I wasn't laughing. As I walked toward the stage, my brother stood up and clapped slowly, mockingly. Someone behind him recorded on their phone. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. The announcer handed me my certificate. The applause sounded distant, like it belonged to another room, another person. When I turned back toward my seat, my brother leaned forward and said, just loud enough for others to hear. Relax. At least now you'll finally be useful for something. That sentence stayed with me longer than the applause ever could. After the ceremony, relatives approached, not to congratulate me but to joke. Your family has a sense of humor. You must be used to it by now. Used to it. That night, as I sat alone in my room, diploma resting on my desk, I finally understood something painful. They didn't humiliate me because they hated me. They humiliated me because they never took me seriously. And the worst part? I had spent years trying to earn respect from people who found comfort in keeping me small. I didn't confront them that night. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. Instead, I made a quiet decision, one that would slowly dismantle the power they thought they had over me. And they didn't notice a thing, until it was far too late. The days after my graduation felt strangely normal. Too normal. No apologies. No uncomfortable conversations. Just jokes, recycled, effortless, thrown casually across dinner tables and phone calls. My brother sent a video clip in the family group chat. It was me walking toward the stage. Someone had added laughing emojis. Iconic moment, he wrote. My mother replied first. Why are you so sensitive? Learn to take a joke. That sentence had followed me my entire life. When I didn't respond, my father called later that night. Not to ask how I was, but to remind me of something else. You know your brother didn't mean anything. And anyway, now that you've graduated, you should start contributing. We've done enough for you. Enough. I looked around my small room, the second-hand desk, the flickering bulb, the suitcase still half-packed from university. I had paid for most of my education myself. But correcting him would have changed nothing. So I said, you're right. That surprised him. From that day onward I changed, not dramatically, not in a way anyone could point to. I stopped explaining myself. Stopped defending my choices. Stopped reacting. When my brother joked about my degree being useless, I smiled. When relatives asked when I'd finally get a real job, I nodded. They mistook my silence for acceptance. Inside, something else was happening. I started waking up early, earlier than everyone else. I applied for positions quietly, using a different email, a different number. I stopped sharing plans. Stopped sharing progress. At home, I became agreeable. I helped more. Spoke less. Listened carefully. People reveal everything when they think you're harmless. My brother talked about his job openly, how he barely showed up anymore, how his manager owed him favors. My parents complained about money, about depending on him, about expectations they had never voiced aloud. They didn't realize I was paying attention. One evening, my mother asked, "Why are you suddenly so calm?" I smiled and said, "Graduation changed me." She laughed, relieved. What she didn't know was that humiliation has a way of sharpening your vision. When you stop chasing approval, you start seeing patterns. Power dynamics. Fear disguised as confidence. They still saw me as the family joke. The backup option. The one who'd stay. And that's why they didn't notice when I stopped needing them. Not emotionally. Not financially. Not at all. 3 weeks later, I received an email that changed everything. I didn't tell my family. I didn't celebrate. Because the opportunity I'd been waiting for came with a condition. One that would place me directly in my brother's shadow. And this time, the audience would be watching him. The email came from a company I never imagined myself working for. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because my brother already worked there. Same building. Different floors. Different realities. The position was entry-level, but the department mattered. Strategic operations. Data, reporting, oversight. The interview process was quick. Professional. Silent. No favors. No connections. When the offer arrived, I read it 3 times before closing my laptop. I told no one. On my first day, I walked into the building wearing a neutral expression, the kind you wear when you don't want to be noticed. The receptionist smiled. Security scanned my badge. Then I saw him. My brother stood near the elevators, laughing with coworkers, tie loosened, confidence loud. He didn't see me at first. I stepped back instinctively, heart racing. This wasn't fear. It was awareness. I took the stairs instead. For weeks, our paths didn't cross. I learned the systems. The metrics. The reports people skimmed but never questioned. I listened more than I spoke. In meetings, I was quiet but prepared. When I submitted work, it was precise. No excuses. No attention seeking. Slowly, people started asking for my input. Not loudly. Not publicly. Privately. One afternoon, my manager leaned over and said, "You notice things others miss." That was the first time anyone had said something like that to me. At home, nothing changed. My brother still joked. Still complained about work being easy. Still mocked my job search, unaware I had already stopped searching. One night at dinner, he said, "Imagine working under someone like me." I'd never let that happen. I kept eating. What he didn't know was that our departments had begun collaborating. My team reviewed performance data across divisions, including his. Names attached. Patterns exposed. I noticed inconsistencies. Missed deadlines. Client escalations that never reached upper management. I didn't flag anything. Not yet. I asked questions instead. Neutral ones. Professional ones. The kind that make systems check themselves. A week later, my manager called me into her office. "Have you worked with anyone in sales operations?" she asked. "Yes," I said carefully. She turned her screen toward me. My brother's name sat at the top of the report. Red indicators. Repeated. My stomach tightened. She sighed. We're doing a full review. I nodded. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. Because karma doesn't announce itself. It waits. The review process was supposed to be confidential. But secrets don't stay hidden when fear enters the room. 2 days later, my brother came home earlier than usual. And for the first time in my life, he looked at me without confidence. He looked threatened. He didn't say anything at first. My brother dropped his keys on the table and sat down, staring at his phone like it had personally betrayed him. No jokes. No loud sighs. No arrogance. That silence felt heavier than any insult he'd ever thrown at me. At dinner, my father asked, "Everything okay at work?" My brother forced a smile. "Yeah. Just routine stuff." Routine. His leg bounced under the table. His eyes kept flicking toward me, quickly, nervously, like he was checking whether I knew something. I didn't react. The next morning, he knocked on my door for the first time in years. "Hey," he said casually, leaning against the frame. "What exactly do you do at your job search thing?" I met his eyes. Calm. Neutral. Operations. He nodded slowly. "Right. Like admin." "Something like that." He laughed, relieved. But the relief didn't last. Over the next few days, his mood shifted constantly. Confident 1 hour. Defensive the next. He started coming home late. Then earlier. Then not at all. Phone calls ended abruptly when I entered a room. Messages were deleted quickly. At work, the review accelerated. Meetings multiplied. Data requests increased. I was asked to prepare comparative summaries, nothing accusatory, nothing personal. Just numbers. Numbers don't argue back. One afternoon, a senior manager joined our meeting unexpectedly. She asked about accountability gaps. My brother was mentioned, not criticized, mentioned. That was enough. That evening, he snapped. "You think you're smart now," he said loudly, pacing the living room. "All quiet and mysterious. Don't forget who you are." My mother rushed in. "What's going on?" "Nothing," he said quickly. Too quickly. He turned to me. "You wouldn't survive where I work." I looked at him, really looked at him. Not with anger. With clarity. "I already do," I said. The room went silent. My mother frowned. "What does that mean?" My brother's face drained of color. He laughed nervously. "He's joking." I didn't correct him. That night, I heard him on the phone, voice low, panicked. "They're auditing everything." I didn't think it mattered. "No, I don't know who started it." I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't revenge. I hadn't exposed him. I hadn't said his name. I had simply stopped protecting his image. And without someone smaller to stand on, he didn't know how to stay tall. The final review meeting was scheduled for Friday. My family believed it was just another work formality. But on Friday morning, I received a message that confirmed what I already knew. This wouldn't stay inside the office. It was about to follow him home. Friday didn't arrive loudly. It crept in, slow, ordinary, almost kind. My brother left early that morning. Too early. He wore a suit he hadn't touched in months, adjusting his tie in the mirror like he was trying to convince himself he still belonged there. No jokes. No confidence. At breakfast, my mother said, "You look tired." He snapped, "I'm fine." The door closed harder than usual behind him. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Meeting concluded. Decision final. That was all the message said. I stared at the screen for a long time before locking it. When he came home, it was still daylight. That alone told the story. He stood in the doorway, shoulders slumped, eyes unfocused. My parents looked up in confusion. "Why are you home so early?" my father asked. My brother opened his mouth, closed it, sat down. "They put me on leave," he said finally. "Temporary," he claimed. "Procedural." But his voice betrayed him. My mother panicked. "What happened?" "Nothing," he snapped again. Then quieter, "Just mistakes." The phone rang an hour later. Not his. Ours. A relative had heard something, a rumor at the company, whispers circulating. "Is everything okay with your son?" they asked my father gently. The house felt smaller after that. By evening, the truth couldn't hold itself together anymore. He admitted to missed deadlines, unreported issues, using influence instead of accountability. "I thought it didn't matter," he said. "Everyone does it." No one spoke. Because suddenly, the family joke wasn't funny anymore. My parents looked at him the way they'd never looked at me, with disappointment instead of amusement. And then my mother turned to me. "You work there too," she said slowly. I nodded. Her eyes widened. "You knew?" I chose my words carefully. I knew the system, not the outcome. She didn't like that answer. But she couldn't argue with it. That night, my brother avoided me. Avoided everyone. He stayed in his room, scrolling endlessly, refreshing emails that never came. The next day, neighbors started asking questions. Friends stopped calling him. Silence replaced laughter. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. The respect he had taken from me wasn't strength. It was borrowed. And without someone beneath him, it collapsed under its own weight. The family expected me to feel satisfied. They expected celebration. Anger. Some kind of victory. But what happened next was quieter, and far more permanent. Because the final shift didn't happen at work. It happened inside our home. No one apologized. Not directly. But the house changed. Dinner conversations became careful. Jokes disappeared. Laughter felt, monitored. My brother stopped sitting at the head of the table. He spoke less. When he did, his voice lacked the authority it once carried. Not because anyone took it from him, but because no one fed it anymore. A week later, his leave became permanent. He didn't say the word terminated, but he didn't have to. His phone stopped buzzing. His mornings lost structure. Meanwhile, my work expanded. More responsibility. More trust. Still no announcements. Still no spotlight. One evening, my mother stood in the doorway of my room. "You never told us how well you were doing," she said. I closed my laptop slowly. "I learned not to." She nodded, swallowing something unspoken. That was the closest thing to regret I would ever get. My father began asking for my opinion, not loudly, not proudly, but sincerely. About finances. About decisions. It felt strange being heard without raising my voice. As for my brother, we existed in parallel. Same house. Different realities. One night, he stopped me in the hallway. "I didn't know you were capable of all that," he said. There was no insult in his voice this time. No mockery. Just loss. I thought about the graduation stage. The laughter. The phone's recording. I thought about how badly I'd wanted approval. "I didn't know either," I replied. And that was the truth. The final shift didn't come with revenge. It came with independence. I moved out quietly a month later. No announcement. No argument. On my last day, I placed my framed diploma back into my bag. Not as proof, but as closure. Because success isn't when the people who hurt you finally clap. It's when you no longer need the sound. Sometimes karma isn't loud. It doesn't embarrass. It doesn't shout. Sometimes it simply removes the audience and lets people face who they are without applause. If this story felt real, it's because it is. Not in detail, but in truth. This was Echoes of Karma.